Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. First off, the lecture we canceled last month has been rescheduled for June 11th. I hope you will all be able to attend. You'll be getting something in writing from us as a reminder. Thank you for your patience with that. Very pleased that no one showed up. We were worried about that, so I stayed quite late, but it was worth it. So thanks for your patience with that. And secondly, I hope you'll join us this weekend at our Maple Festival. It's the 41st annual for the Institute of Science, and it's open to the public this year, so no pre-registration is required. If you feel like coming out, it should be a beautiful day. We've had a nice turnout. There'll be some new activities as well as a new sort of taste buffet, all maple themed, so a little different than the breakfast, but it's this Sunday the 15th from noon to 4, so it's open to the public. Our speaker tonight is Carrie Vollmer-Sanders. She's the director of the Western Lake Erie Basin Project for the Nature Conservancy. Carrie leads the Conservancy's efforts to promote a healthy Lake Erie by working with farmers, agribusiness, researchers, government agencies, and conservation groups to improve nutrient management and drainage practices. Prior to joining the Nature Conservancy in 2010, Carrie worked for Michigan Farm Bureau as their agricultural ecology specialist. She has a bachelor's degree in agriculture and biology education and a master's degree in agricultural economics, focusing on environmental economics, both of them from Michigan State University. Carrie received a Champion of Change Award from the White House in 2014, congratulations, for her leadership in helping the agricultural industry develop, launch, and administer the 4R Nutrient Stewardship Certification Program. She farms with her parents, husband, and 2 sons in Northwest Ohio and lives in Angola, Indiana. Carrie, welcome to the Institute of Science.
All right, it's good to see you guys tonight. As I was saying, it took a little bit longer to get here than I wanted, so I'm really happy to be here in front of you and to talk with you. Feel free to interrupt me if you don't understand something, and you'll probably have to talk up because I can't see you real well, so just keep that in mind. But tonight we're going to talk about algae blooms and what's going on with Lake Erie, one of the things I've been working on for the past, I would say, 5 years. But before I get into that, I just want to give you a brief background on the Nature Conservancy. So how many of you are familiar with the Nature Conservancy? Oh, good. It's great to see so many hands up. So the mission of the Nature Conservancy is to conserve the land and water in which all life depend. Occasionally I think that they should give us, when we get hired in, green capes, right? Because that's a pretty tall order, but we're all working hard on that. And if you know the Nature Conservancy, we have a lot of preserves throughout Michigan, and these are some of them highlighted here. Almost 400,000 acres, which is pretty impressive. And I would say over the course of the last 10 years, the Nature Conservancy has started to think about land protection and resource protection a little bit differently than we have in the past. And so we've started thinking at larger scales, so thinking about the Great Lakes as a whole system, and what can we do when it comes to aquatic invasive species. We need to work together throughout the Great Lakes on some of those things. We also need to think about working as a whole community on things like Lake Erie. And so it's no longer preserve by preserve or watershed, small watershed by small watershed, but we're thinking at the size of the lake, how can we impact what's going on? And this quote is by Solomon, and I thought it was kind of funny, you know, like not to be confused with King Solomon, but nonetheless a very wise statement. In the end, our conservation success will be judged on the persistence of populations and ecosystem processes, rather than the short-term symbolic collection of species in a few small areas. We do need to think about our whole systems on a large scale and protect those areas that have very special creatures and habitat. So as you heard earlier, I went to Michigan State, and I have been a basketball fan, Michigan State basketball fan since I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old. I'm from Ohio originally, so being a Michigan State basketball fan was sometimes not always accepted where I grew up. But that being said, I think the Nature Conservancy and Tom Izzo have a lot in common. And So, he's been in it for the long haul. They've got the IZONE. He's got a lot of followers, a lot of people that are supporting him, helping him do his good work. And he thinks about things in a way that he needs to solve problems, put great teams together, solve problems as that team is working throughout the game. He's a very dedicated guy. Very focused, and I would say the Nature Conservancy is as well. We can't do everything, so we focus really hard on the things that we can do. The other thing I would say that we are is we're really this and. So it's nature and people. It's clean water and food. It's industry and recreation. We help build those bridges. It's not an either or, it's an and solution that we're looking for. And we have to do that in the Great Lakes to make sure that we can live here, work here, and play here. So these are some headlines. Maybe you've seen those. August 3rd was a very tough day. Initially it was going to be tough because I had a family reunion. But it quickly turned to something different in that I had this text message it was probably 7 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, I must be reading something wrong. And so one of my aunts lives in Toledo, and so I gave her a call, and I said, what's going on with the water? Oh, well, we can't drink it. We're coming to where you are. We're going to get some bottled water. They put a ban on it. She's 80 years old. And so this is a very serious issue, and something that I had hoped that we would be able to not have happen. But nonetheless, this is the picture that is associated most closely with what's going on in Lake Erie. When you see a glass of water like that that's green, you don't want to go there, fish there, swim there. And my hope is that through the work that we're doing, that glass of green can't be found again. Really, we're hoping for clean water to be associated with what we're doing. So, an algae bloom. I want to give you a little bit of background on how these algae blooms get created. So, they need warm water, enough sunlight coming through the water. You have to have pH levels just right, and you have to have sufficient nutrients. So 2 nutrients are primarily necessary, nitrogen and phosphorus. Now, phosphorus is really the nutrient we have been most focused on in freshwater systems, because that is the nutrient that grows the algae. The nitrogen is what comes in almost secondarily in freshwater systems, and that algae helps it become more toxic. So if we can prevent the algae from growing, we can prevent the toxins from happening. When you think about the Great Lakes, we've got really deep Great Lakes like Lake Superior, and then Lake Erie is very shallow. In the western basin near Toledo, Detroit, the average depth is about 24 feet. So it's really like a pond when you think about it. It's very shallow, and it gets very warm very quickly. So we start to see algae growing in what we would call a bloom amount beginning in July and August. Lake Erie is an overloaded system. Nutrients is one of the things it's overloaded with. It's also overloaded because we've changed the hydrology, or the movement of water in that system, clear back starting in 1850. We also have a sediment issue. So a lot of the soil is clay, and if you've ever played with clay, it's really fine when you put it in your fingers. That fine clay can get picked up in water very easily and be moved quite quickly to wherever the water slows down. And when I talk about changing in the hydrology, we used to have what we called the Great Black Swamp. The town I grew up in was called Mudsock. Yeah, they changed the name to Eden. It was a great marketing tool, but we still have 1,000 people, sometimes you just can't change. But the Great Black Swamp was, people really focused. They ditched, they tiled, they moved water out of that area so we could live there, we could work there, we could build roads there, we could farm there, and this essentially is gone. We have about 5% of the water, the wetlands remaining, which wetlands are, if you're not familiar, they're similar to the lungs or the liver of your body. You know, they help you slow things down, they clean things out. So it helps process a lot of things before it gets out into the lake. This is a town in Findlay, Ohio. This used to be called the 100-year storm event. They're now getting this 100-year storm event 2 or 3 times a year. This is very serious. We have flashier, more intense rainfall that's coming. We have done such a great job of moving the water off of the farm fields and away from the homes and businesses that essentially it moves so quickly it doesn't have a place to go. And this is, you'll see this annually in Findlay. Surface tile drainage, this is what I'm talking about. We have a farm field, we have tiled our fields. If you don't tile, you probably don't farm. Approximately 85 to 95% of the acres are tiled, and that's just a matter of if you want to farm it or not. But this is what the tile system looks like on the far left. On the right-hand side, that actually has a measurement device on it that's measuring what's coming out of the tile. But essentially, it's what you would see out into a ditch, those tiles sitting out into the ditch. Like I said before, we had excess nutrients, and many times people ask, where are the nutrients coming from? Let's just shut it off at the source, right? It makes perfect sense. Often people think, all right, golf courses and homes. That's where you need to focus. And really about 2%, 1 to 2% of the nutrients, the phosphorus is coming from homes. And that's because this phosphorus-free fertilizer has been really promoted by Scott's, for example. And when you look at a fertilizer bag, there are 3 numbers on it. This is a 10-0-10 mix. The first number is nitrogen, the second number is phosphorus, and the third number is potassium. Those 3 nutrients are the 3 nutrients that you need to grow things initially. If you have an established grass, like most people do for their lawns, they don't need phosphorus. They don't need to establish roots. The roots are already there. So a phosphorus-free fertilizer for the lawn is perfectly acceptable and actually probably better for you in the long run. You're not wasting your money on it. The other, I'm going to talk about 2 other sources, and these are the 2 major sources. So we have excess nutrient loading come from urban areas, primarily the combined sewer overflows. I had mentioned before that we have these heavy, really intense rainfalls that are coming, and when I was a kid, we talked about a half inch of rain coming over a 12-hour period. We called it the $1 million rain. It's great for crops. It can really turn your yield around in just that 12-hour rainfall. Well, we're seeing less and less of that, and more of these. You might get an inch of rainfall in an hour. So we're getting 70% of our rainfall in about 12 events, which is pretty substantial. And you think about all that rain coming at one time and think about the urban areas, there's a lot of hard surfaces, not a lot of place for water to go. And I have a pointer. If the storm drains and the wastewater from houses are coming together at the same time with a heavy rainfall event, it can overload the treatment plant. And what happens? Well, it has nowhere to go, and it dumps that sewage right into the creek, and which essentially goes right to Lake Erie, or whatever other lake is, or Gulf of Mexico is close. Now, there are some really cool, innovative things happening, and Cleveland is leading the way on a lot of this. They're separating the sewer systems and the wastewater. They're separating those systems. They're also building extra storage. So they've torn up whole sections of the city, streets essentially, building storage capacity under those streets so that when they do get those heavy rainfalls, that extra overflow can go right into that storage. Great idea. What are you doing with the stuff underneath the roads? Nothing, right? So it's they have really made some huge strides to make an impact on that side. It's not cheap, however, and that's why a lot of cities are not able to do what the city of Cleveland is able to do. Now, the Western Lake Erie Basin is about 7.2 million acres. This is the watershed, and these little blotches of color that you see all over here, these are really small watersheds down to between 2 and 10 acres, so very small, so 2 and 10 football fields, so pretty small areas. And I show you this because this watershed is either urban or it's agriculture. The blue is the urban areas, the red is the ag areas. 70% of the watershed is in agriculture in any given year. Corn and soybeans are the primary crops that are grown here, and that's 50% of the total acres. So about 3.5 million acres in this watershed is in corn or soybeans in any given year. So before I move on, I want to make one point based on a conversation I had just a few minutes ago. Corn and soybeans is not something that you eat directly. Typically it's processed or it goes to animal feed or fuel before you see the end result. So you might have soybean oil, some sort of corn syrup, or it goes in to feed animals and you eat the end product of that. So we don't eat the commodities that are produced in this area. When you think about apples, blueberries, some of the other things grown in Michigan, direct to consumer, you can pay extra if that blueberry is produced in a way that you think is appropriate, right? It's a little bit different here because of what's produced. So I want to talk about agriculture. It's 70% of the watershed, and we're seeing excess nutrients. Somewhere between 50 and 80% of all the nutrients are coming from agriculture. And we're talking about phosphorus here. And there are a couple of different ways that that phosphorus comes in an ag system. One is commercial fertilizer, and that's what you see here being put on with the planter at planting time, or here being put on with a sprayer. And this is what we call broadcast. This is similar to how some of the lawns were spread, right? That broadcast spreader that was the push cart. This is just a big long lawn spreader on a truck. The other nutrient the other way nutrients come in agriculture settings is through manure. This is a manure applicator. These knives right here inject the fertilizer right into the soil. That's only for liquid fertilizer. Often there's dry fertilizer as well that's spread kind of like this right here. And as I had said, the phosphorus coming from the ag fields is somewhere between 50 and 80% of the total phosphorus that's getting into the lake. That's what the research is telling us. If they're half wrong, that's still 25 to 40% of the nutrients are coming from agriculture. I talked about the urban setting a little bit ago. Somewhere between 25 and 50% of the nutrients are coming from the urban settings. So if we're half wrong there, 25% of the nutrients are coming from the urban areas. We all have a role to play in cleaning up Lake Erie. Agriculture needs to do what it can do. You as landowners, homeowners need to do what you can do. If you're a member of a council on a county board or a city board, you can make some decisions too that can help Lake Erie. So these are the cumulative impacts. And we were talking earlier about seeing the algae bloom from the sky, what you can see from the satellite imagery. These are waves coming to the lake. This is actually a farmer up in a plain, and he took these photos just last August. So you can see the algae. It's like there's a gentleman that has a beautiful phone, bright green phone. Where is it? Tell me your name again. Graham, that's right. I was going to call you Garth. Graham has a neon green phone, and it's a little dark in here. You can't see it, but the color of his phone is like the color of the algae, if you haven't seen it. So go see Graham afterwards if you want to see what algae looks like. But no, seriously, this is not just an issue for those people that want to play in the lake. It's an issue for everyone in the Great Lakes and anyone near fresh water. It's a serious concern, and we really need to take some steps in the right direction. A lot of people talk about Lake Erie was dead once, and what's going on now. This is a graph, and I won't give you too many graphs. I think we have 2 in here. Back in the 70s, we had high dissolved reactive phosphorus. That's the phosphorus that plants can take up right away as food and grow very quickly. It was very high in the 70s. Right in here, we had the Clean Water Act, regulated a lot of things. Point sources were regulated, urban areas regulated. It dropped dramatically. We saw a little bit of up and down here, but it's been on the rise again. And this is where we're at now, which is almost where we were back in the 70s. Although it is a different kind of algae that's growing now, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I had mentioned that we're having more intense rainfall events. This is the water year in 2014. I got this information from Heidelberg University. They're the premier university actually in the country on water quality monitoring. Thankfully, they're in the Western Lake Erie Basin, and we have some great data. This circle represents 23 of the highest loads of phosphorus. When phosphorus comes into the lake between March and June, that's the phosphorus that grows the algae. So that's the food that grows the algae that shows up in July, August, September. So we need to target the reduction in phosphorus during that particular time. And this is what happened in Toledo. So we had this was right. We had a lot of phosphorus coming in at just the right time. We knew there was going to be a bloom. What we didn't know is how much wind was going to come during that time frame. And we had some westerly winds. And as you can see, the algae is really fine, really thin. And when wind comes through, it mixes very well in the water column. We had a westerly wind that plopped that algae bloom right over the water intake pipe of Toledo. They were not prepared for it, obviously. As you can see, even just an hour of reprieve lets the algae sort of float back up to the top. But they didn't have that for quite some time, and that's why they had the ban on the drinking water for such a long period of time. This was the forecast that year, which was lower than 2013 and lower than 2011, which was the largest algal bloom on record. In 2011, the size of the algae bloom was 450 square miles. If you were sitting at Maumee Bay State Park and wanted to go fish, you would have to take your boat and drive 12 miles to get out of the bloom. Just unbelievable what it did to the economics of the area. So, and I say this, and please, not all algae is harmful, right? So there's some really good algae, and at different levels, it's really okay. That's the basis for a lot of the food chain. So it's not all bad. These are some things that might look really bad, but they're not harmful to humans or animals, and a lot of the fish and species in that area can take care of those. These algae, though, are harmful, and you have to worry about the toxins that they produce. And the toxins are based on how much nitrogen is in that water. And some of this stuff looks terrible, like the one on the far right. This looks awful, doesn't it? but you can't really tell if it's at a toxic level or not. This is a photo taken along Lake Erie, and microcystin is at 19 parts per billion. It gets toxic to humans at 3. There's people playing in there. Does it look bad? It's okay. Obviously, they didn't think it looked bad enough. This is a bloom on an inland lake. No microcystin that day. In fact, it never got to 3 parts per billion. Amazing, isn't it? You can't really tell by looking at it. This, I thought, that doesn't look too bad. It's clear water, has this green stuff on top, but we could deal with that. Microcystin is at 1,000. 3 is what's harmful to humans. So if you go to lakes and you see some of this stuff, I would be careful. I would also ask that whatever public lake you're going to, that you make sure that they're testing the water. Again, I don't mean to scare you. I just want to make you aware of what's going on. With all of this being said, what in the world are we going to do about it, right? It seems like the green capes I was talking about, we still don't have them, but we're working on it. And in the ag setting, that's what I'm working on. We're really looking at this systems approach. We talk about infield, edge of field, and downstream as a whole system to help fix that algae bloom, slow that water down, take the nutrients out. When I talk about infield practices, this small picture over here is called cover crops, and that's growing a crop that is going to be planted in the late summer, fall, grow throughout the winter. It keeps the soil there, keeps the nutrients there, helps water. When we get those high rain events in March, like right now, when the snow is melting, the soil is staying there. Whatever nutrients are in the soil, they stay there. The large picture is actually that farmer is putting down nutrients and cover crops at the same time. Phenomenal practice that we're really excited about. This is called strip tillage. You can kind of see the strips that they're tilling. When we talk about edge of field practices, this farmer has a filter strip up here and actually has a filter strip within the ditch. So they called this a 2-stage ditch design where they have the filter strips inside the ditch and on top of the benches. We haven't changed anything down here, but when the water comes, it comes out on those filter strips inside that ditch, and it slows the flow of the water, the nutrients, the sediment drop out. It doesn't reach Lake Erie. And downstream, wetlands. We need to bring back the wetlands. So they don't have to be thousands of acres, but properly placed wetlands, even 2 or 3 acres, can do an amazing job of processing those nutrients, slowing the flow of the water before it gets to the lake. One of the things we're doing in the Nature Conservancy is we're working with a whole bunch of scientists to target exactly where we need to put these practices. This is a map of where, now this is draft, so it could change. But this is a map of where we need to work. If it's yellow or darker, we need to work there to address phosphorus. If it's in the blues, it's probably okay from an agricultural standpoint. Maybe we need to look at some of the urban issues. We'll be able to use a map like this starting in September. The other thing we've been working on is sustainability. Now, oftentimes when you talk with ag groups and you talk about sustainability, they're like, no, we don't like that word. That means small farms and organic. We don't support that. Sustainability is something different when you talk to the Nature Conservancy. It's making sure that we're thinking about the environmental impacts, the economic impacts, and the social impacts of the decisions made, of the management practices made on that farm. One of the things that we're using to talk with them about this is called the 4 R's. The 4 R's stand for the right source, the right rate, the right time, and the right place of fertilizer. So if we get the fertilizer in the soil, we can keep it there. If we put it on not before a heavy rainfall, we can keep it there. So the other thing that TNC has the Nature Conservancy has changed their viewpoint on is we used to go one-on-one with farmers, and we worked with every farmer in the watershed. If it was an 80,000 acre watershed, we knew every farmer. I'm at an 8 million acre watershed almost. I can't work with every farmer. We would need a staff of 80 to do that. We don't have that kind of funding. So we have thought about how does the agricultural system work? Who advises the farmers? Who does the farmers trust? There are two people that a farmer goes to on a regular basis. They go to their crop consultant, they go to their banker. We are working with crop consultants. This gentleman that you see on the right-hand side up at the podium, he's a crop consultant. He is talking with his growers, his comrades, about nutrient stewardship. We can build our impact by working with the trusted advisors and scale conservation to places that we haven't been before. So I want to take just a moment. I've got about 9 minutes left. I want you to think about what lens that you look at Lake Erie through. Are you a farmer, a landowner, a business person, homeowner, recreation? So I see white and gold. How many other people see white and gold? All right, who sees the blue and black? Who is right? Right? Well, yeah, so since I'm up here, let's, white and gold, right? But people see things a little bit differently. And so when we're working with these broad constituencies, we have to keep that in mind. And when you think about these big, nasty problems like what's going on with Lake Erie, you have to think about how others are viewing the problem, what lens they're looking at the problem with. We brought this group of stakeholders together, and we started putting together a 4R certification program. It wasn't easy. It took a little while to build some trust, but over the course of 3 years, we developed a program that was launched last March, and we have had 5 agribusinesses that are certified that they are doing the right things for nutrient management in Lake Erie. Those 5 service providers cover 300,000 acres. There's no way I could have talked with those farmers, 530 farmers, and gotten them to change any practices on my own. You have to work with who the farmers trust. I'm not going to talk a lot about the program, except know that it's a private third party that's doing the audits. It is a voluntary program. The ag business pays for that audit. It's approximately $1,200 to do the audit, another $600 just to be part of the program each year. They have to get an audit every year. This is just a depiction. What I want to tell you is, we have 5 certified agribusinesses. 60 of them are in the process of becoming certified. The goal is to have 1 million acres by the end of this year under certified management in the Western Basin. Right now we have about 250,000 acres under certified management, and in total 300,000. So anyone that is in that Lake Erie watershed can become certified. Why in the world would they do this? Why would they become certified? They're paying each year about $1,800 just to get this little certification stamp. These are some answers from nutrient service providers, from folks like the Andersons, the Certified Crop Production Services, Wilbur Ellis, Legacy Farmers Co-op, Morrill Companies. This is why they're doing it. There's a lot of regulation being talked about. If regulation shuts agriculture down, those companies are out of business. They want to be able to document their sustainable practices. So there's a lot of discussion, whether it's Walmart, Kellogg's, McDonald's, even General Mills. How do they prove that their products are sustainable? Remember, these are corn, soybeans, and wheat farmers. So their products are processed into something else. So it's, they're hoping for a market mechanism. The proof of their sustainability is partially met by this certification program. They're also hoping to increase sales of services. when you see the certification program and the 42 different criteria, you could look at it and say, oh my gosh, we're going to lose sales. We're not going to be able to make up that sales in anything if we are recommending less phosphorus or less nitrogen. They're hoping that they can increase their services to farmers, whether it's through technology, timing of application, different pieces of equipment that apply the nutrients to put it in different places. We're not just taking the word for it, we're actually doing some research. We have a 5-year evaluation. It started last July, looking at what the impact of the certification program is to the people within the watershed, the people that recreate there, live there, the planet, all those environmental impacts, whether it's edge of field, in the watershed or at the lake level, and then what does it mean to the nutrient service provider's bottom line, to the farmer's bottom line. We need to know that profitability side too, so that we can talk about that and hopefully get more folks to engage. So far, the funding for this program has been largely done by the private industry. The Fertilizer Institute, the Mosaic Company Foundation, Great Lakes Protection Fund, and the Joyce Foundation have been huge proponents of the work at this point. And we're excited to see the program growing at the rate we are. Initially, our goals were that we would have maybe 5 people. Actually, we were hoping for 6 people interested within a year of the program, and we have 5 people right now that are already certified. So it's gone well beyond what we had imagined. But this isn't the only thing that we're working on. We're also working on demonstration areas in the watershed. So the large circles we're doing watershed scale demonstration areas. We're looking at tile drainage. That's an issue because a lot of water moves through the tile. We're looking at the design of the ditches. Remember, putting the filter strip inside the ditch and on top of the ditch so that it has this 2-stage ditch design to it. We're also doing research on the cover crops and what crops that are planted, how much does that do for water quality. So a lot of different things going on there. And what's really cool is we have some science that we're testing or planning to test in the watershed over by Fremont, Ohio. That area gets flooded quite often. It has 4R nutrient stewardship certified retailer, and we have a lot of farmers over there that are willing to put in, they call it drainage water management, so they can manage the water that comes out of their tile. They're going to slow it down when it needs to be slowed down and speed it up in the spring when they want to plant. So in May, it might speed up and they can let more water through. Every other time it's plugged. And we're really excited about some of the implications that could lead to. So can we turn the lake around? You know, this was 1969, right? The Cuyahoga was on fire. The things, even Dr. Seuss said Lake Erie is dead, right? I would say if we can put the systems approach in, we can talk about infield, edge of field, and downstream. We can do it. Now there's going to be a weather component that we're not going to be able to, necessarily take care of Mother Nature. We also have to think about the adoption rate of some of these practices. And there is going to be a lag time to the reaction. So we might change all the practices today. We don't see, because of nutrients in the streams already, or in the beds of the streams, or even in the bed of Lake Erie, it might take a little while to help clean it up. But I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we could do it. So what does clean water in agriculture look like? I'm not real sure. I think we are really close when we talk about a certification program that gets 300,000 acres to do the right thing in less than a year. If we can do that every 6 months, we're going to be on our way. If we can get wetlands put back into the system, if we can see some market indicators to help improve the adoption rate, I think we can see the clean water in agriculture much more quickly when we're talking about Toledo's water. If you want to get a hold of me or read more about the work that we're doing, not only in Western Lake Erie Basin, but the Great Lakes, there's loads of ways you can contact us. I would say that, you guys are a wealth of knowledge. I haven't been able to meet many of you, and likely I won't be able to talk one-on-one with you. But if there is someone that you think I need to talk with, please write down my information, send me an email, tweet me. I just learned to tweet. I'm tweeting. Please get a hold of me. Let me know if there's someone you think I should talk with about what we're doing. You have a better idea or a different idea. We're really open, and we want to make sure that we vet everything. Every day we're learning more about the research, more about how we can target, and with that, I will open it up to questions or comments. Yes, sir.
What is the situation on the Canadian side of the lake?
Oh, that's a good question. So the Canadians have a different situation than we have. So their soils are a little bit different. The glaciers left a little bit different kind of soil. They also have a lot more agricultural manure runoff than commercial fertilizer. 75% of our runoff is from commercial fertilizer. So it is a little bit different in the mix. We're working closely with their Environment Canada. They have some sister organizations that we're working with. They're doing some good things. They don't apply nutrients in the winter, so that's, I feel like we've already made some strides, but they're working on it. Yes?
I've always been told that farmers they don't want to waste fertilizer. They're very cost conscious. So why is there so much fertilizer runoff? You would think farmers don't want to apply fertilizer and then have it run off.
Yeah.
That'd be just
silly, right? That's a good question. So when you think about a farm field, when they're averaging out where the nutrients are coming from, it averages out to be a pound or two from each acre. When you think that a farmer is putting on 200 pounds an acre and they're losing a pound or two, they're actually doing not a bad job, right? Like 99% of it is staying where it needs to be. So it's just taking that extra effort. What else can they do? And I think that's what we need to focus on. And it's that shift in thinking, because farmers did think if they kept their soil in place that their phosphorus was staying there. We're learning that phosphorus is coming through tile, and it's coming in surface water also without the soil. So we have been taught differently for the last 50 years. So it is a change in thinking as well.
And which is worse, the tile water or the surface runoff from farm fields? What has more phosphorus? That tile water contains a lot of phosphorus. It looks really clear when it comes out of those
right.
discharges. It looks like, and I've heard farmers take that water and drink it, that it's better than their well water sometimes.
So I don't know if I'd go that far, but I would say that so it depends on which system that you're in and where you're at in the watershed, which water has more nutrients in it. In some watersheds, the research that's coming out is saying that between 50 and 65% of the phosphorus in that whole watershed is coming out of the tile. And that might mean that we need to apply phosphorus much different than we have in the past. Instead of that broadcast fertilizer, which has been done for the last 30 years, we may need to switch to inject it, which means slower drive times, longer time in the field, probably less fertilizer being applied also, but it's just a different system. So you need to have more people to apply the fertilizer. I don't think I said this earlier, but most farmers hire their fertilizer application done. They also hire their recommendations for how much fertilizer needs to be applied. So that's why the certification program is targeting those advisors, because those are the people that are advising the farmers on how much, where at, and actually doing the application. Some of your largest farmers that maybe have If they have 5,000 acres or more, maybe they do it themselves. Yes, in the back? Yes, yes.
What effect does the algal bloom have on people who use favorite swimming in it?
Yes.
What effect does it have on the body?
So it affects different people differently. Essentially, it's a neurotoxin, so it's going to impact your liver. It's going to leave skin rashes. It can kill someone. So when you don't know what is going on with the lake and you see some of this stuff, my recommendation would be to not recreate there.
So drinking it is not the only thing that's harmful.
Right. You can just be boating in it and the water sprays up, and then that gets those toxins in the air particles, and you can respirate them, and then when you breathe them in, then it's in your lungs. So it can be very harmful to human health in a lot of different ways. One of my friends, she actually lives in Michigan but gets her water from Toledo. So I'm not exactly sure where she lives, but she's in her 60s and she has some health issues, and she brushed her teeth that morning and had a glass of water after she brushed her teeth, and she got sick that Saturday. So it impacts different people differently. It kind of depends on their immune system. There was a question down here. Yes? Yeah? Hi.
What's the criteria for certification?
So there's 41 different criteria. There's 3 parts to it. So there's an education part. That crop advisor needs to talk with their farmer about the 4 R's. And when I say farmer, a crop advisor might have between 50 and 150 farmers that they talk with on a regular basis. So that's how many one service provider has. So they have an education component. There's a record-keeping component. And then the third, which is really the nuts and bolts of the program, is what recommendations are they giving and how are they doing the application. So it goes very specifically through what they're doing, if they're following the right science, if they've tested the soil, if they're applying the nutrients according to the soil. I didn't get into that because it's very technical, but you can find that information online at 4rcertified.org. It has the standard and everything.
Is there any testing at the end of the tile?
So that's the research part. Yes. So we're not tested, if we tested all the tile outlets, we could test in a quarter mile 50 tiles. So we're not doing that, but we are going into the watershed and testing at the edges of the fields, both the tile and the surface water, doing that on a field by field basis, doing that on a watershed scale basis, and then comparing that to what impacts are at Lake Erie. So not every tile, but on specific watersheds we are. There's about 16 different locations throughout the Western Basin that we're looking at, and we're keeping track of what they're doing on each farm so that we can better understand what practices are happening on the field to know what's coming out of the tile. Yes, sir?
Since we're discussing green algae,
Yeah.
are there any green fertilizer techniques that are also being used? And is that part of your overall process, I guess, to try to eliminate a lot of chemicals, particularly phosphorus, and again, more green fertilizer?
So we can't eliminate phosphorus because each year you're growing a new crop, and so you need new roots, and crops need phosphorus to grow roots. But what I will say is the practices that we're suggesting are proven by science to have very low amounts of phosphorus leave the field. So what we're suggesting, and I didn't go in detail on that, but so putting phosphorus on when you're planting the crop, they call it a 2x2 placement. The phosphorus goes 2 inches over and 2 inches under where the seed is planted. And you can do that as you're planting the corn or soybean. There's also putting phosphorus on injecting it. I had showed you that strip till. That can be done in the spring and done without cover crops, but you can inject the fertilizer so that it stays in contact with the soil. We are recommending no application on frozen or snow-covered ground, no application of fertilizer before a heavy rainfall or snow melt, which is essentially what's happening now. When you're putting your fertilizer on, soil tests have to be taken before you apply fertilizer. So if you don't have a soil test, you don't know what your soil needs, you don't apply fertilizer. Yes, ma'am.
What was the size of the area within the lake that was affected by that most recent bloom?
So in 2011, the largest algal bloom was 450,000 acres. This was not quite half the size. I don't know for sure. My guess would be that it was probably 250 square miles, just based on the number ranking. But that's probably not accurate.
That was the one this past August.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Enter into the mix, if you would, the effects of GMOs and organic farming.
So, to be quite honest, both use commercial and manure fertilizer. So when thinking about what's coming out the tile or across the surface, I can't say that one is better or worse than the other. What I can say, though, is if that farmer has paid attention to the health of their soil, that soil is more likely to stay where it's at, and it all comes down to a management decision. And that's why the Nature Conservancy isn't picking winners and losers. We have a demand for organic production. We have a demand for very low-cost food production. And so we need to have both systems, but both systems need to take care and manage their nutrients correctly. And that's why the nutrient service providers focusing on making sure they're giving the best advice to the farmers is one of the places that we're working. If you can manage the water going through the farm, through your yard, through the city, you can manage the nutrients as well. Yes?
If you're on a small inland lake where they are treating the water, but you're still seeing algae in between treatments, is there a way you can test the water yourself?
There is. I'm not sure the cost. It usually takes a couple days to turn around, but usually there's local water scientists we have in the Angola area, and it's the very northeast corner of Indiana. I would say there's probably 3 or 4 places that we could go to test water. I don't know that each county does it. Like, it's not like you go to your health department and they can help you with it, but if you talk with your county NRCS or extension office, they might be able to tell you who could test the water. And like I said before, not all algae is bad. Yes, sir?
Other than the agriculture,
Yep.
are we making much progress on the combined sewer overflow in all the urban areas feeding into western Lake Erie, other than Cleveland?
It's a lot slower. So the combined sewer overflows is going to cost millions of dollars to fix. And when you think about the city of Toledo and the city of Detroit, those are the largest. I think the city of Detroit's probably the largest in the country when you talk about treatment plants, water treatment plants. So it's really expensive, and citizens have to pay for it. In Ohio, there is a law essentially that you cannot charge a citizen more than 3% of the average income for that area for their water use. So it really limits the amount of funding that you can produce from the citizens from water use costs. There are some low-cost loans that are available. I'm not sure how cities are viewing that either, because essentially they still have to pay it back. Sir?
You're talking the western basin.
Yes.
What about the eastern part of the lake, and then where in Ontario, I understand that Toronto was very concerned,
So it's really interesting. So I'll give you sort of a snapshot of what exactly the lake looks like, and I'll have to cut it off, right, because 8 o'clock's my end time, and I have a few more things to tell you. The Western Basin, that's where the algae grows and some of the toxins grow, and that's where most of that toxic algae is located. When you think about the Central Basin, so that's like the city of Cleveland, for example, that's where you might see what they call a dead zone. And a dead zone, we were talking about it before we started, that essentially you can't see that from space, but all the oxygen is sucked out of the water because the algae die. So nothing grows in that dead zone, and in 2011 there were dead fish that washed up to shore in Cleveland, and that's because of the dead zone. The eastern shore, it's a little bit deeper, so there's a lot less impact on that side. In the middle of the lake, though, we still have some of that dead zone. Along the coast, though, we don't have that issue. So when all of this takes place, you think about what's going into Lake Ontario. Toronto still has some issues. I was on a beach last summer and I thought, all right, boys, we're not going into that. I have two boys that are 7 and 8, and they were just ready to dive in, you know, and it didn't look good. They didn't have any signs posted, but I wouldn't have recommended anyone getting into the lake. I don't know all the issues on Lake Ontario. I will tell you that Canada is actively looking at both Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. They're working the hardest on those two lakes and less on Superior and Huron, just because of where their people live. So I think it's at 8:01. Should I finish? Maybe we can talk afterwards. Okay, and anyone else that has questions. If you want to help the Nature Conservancy, there's a lot of different ways you can. One of them is you can become a member. You can learn more about what's going on. Our office sends out a newsletter twice a year. In fact, we're just getting ready to send it out in another couple of weeks. And there's a Nature Conservancy magazine that comes out 6 times a year. A wealth of information not only about what's going on here in the Great Lakes, but around the world. I didn't say this earlier, but TNC is in every state in the United States and in 34 different countries. We're the largest nonprofit working on water quality issues in the world. There's upcoming events. Other people are Twitter chattering. So there's a talk coming up on March 20th at noon if you want to learn more about freshwater and fish. And there's some great scientists that are going to talk about Asian carp and some of the different things that we're doing within TNC. Science talks. So this is a lecture series. If you haven't been to one before, thank you for coming. We have 2 more. Let's Get Wild and Just Doing It. And the June 11th, that is the one that was canceled earlier, so that's a reschedule. So hopefully you can make it back and hear from other wonderful scientists that we have on staff. And something that's coming up, you know, this is great spring weather. I feel like it's 80 degrees and it's only 40, but it's great to see the sunshine again. On May 2nd, if you want to go to Grass Lake, Michigan, they're going to do a treasure hunt at one of the preserves. And so that'll be a real treat to see the spring flowers then. And with that, thank you all for coming. And don't forget to let me know who else I should talk with. If you have a suggestion, send me that name.